Good evening, everyone. Welcome here to this Onward After Hours event, the first After Hours event. Some of you may have been to events that we've previously called Under 35 Meetups. We've decided to rebrand. So you are all innovators, first movers. You are it. So thank you all very much for being here. My name is Will Tanner. I am the director of the campaigning think tank Onward. We're a new think tank set up to come up with new ideas for the next generation of centre-right thinkers and leaders, and we particularly focus on a younger generation, how the centre-right can appeal to a younger generation. We know that at the last general election, the age gap between young and old was pretty enormous, quite scary for those of us on the centre-right who see the future in centre ground, appealing to a broad range of different people, with something like a 29-point lead for the Labour Party amongst people my age, those between 25 and 34. So it's really fantastic to have an event here this evening precisely focusing on that problem, how we can go beyond the core vote, how political parties can reach into the centre ground, and I'm completely thrilled to have such a wonderful panel to discuss that here this evening. So we've got Johnny Mercer MP for Plymouth, who'll be known to many of you from his candid, hard-hitting interviews in newspapers, and including one in this morning's Sun, but also as an MP who speaks from the heart, who tells it like it is, and who has a load of real life and incredibly hard-hitting experience behind him as a soldier in the Royal Artillery, as someone who spent 3 tours in Afghanistan, who has done the commando course, who has been there, done it outside of Parliament, and now trying to stand up for constituents and indeed for veterans inside of Parliament. We will then have kind of responses to Johnny's remarks from two people who've been fantastically supportive of Onwards and who I know very well. So Craig Woodhouse, someone I used to work with in government, a former advisor to Karen Bradley when she was at DCMS, and then also press secretary to the Prime Minister after the 2017 general election, before coming here to Edelman as a director. And Craig has an illustrious history as a journalist before that, working for, among others, The Sun, and also chairing the Parliamentary Press Gallery. And Laura Hughes, who works for the FT as political correspondent, and previously of the Telegraph newspaper as well. So a really esteemed panel. And I must also thank Edelman for hosting us in these completely fantastic surroundings. It's great to be able to host events at kind of brilliant venues like this, and at Onward we always try and make sure that we're not just hosting in stuffy political venues that many of you may have been to before, but actually try and bring people together in interesting spaces. So it's great to be here this evening. So before I hand over to Johnny, I don't know if anyone has the clicker, but we've got we try and make these events slightly different to political events normally. So I think if we click over to the first slide, if all of you should have mobile phones, given that many of you are millennials, and so we're going to do some live snap polling here this evening. So the first poll is, what should politicians prioritise to improve their relationships to young people? What can politicians do to engage you better? If you go to sli.do, sli.do, you'll be presented with a poll question and a series of responses. Just choose one of them, and then later on in the evening we'll reveal the results, and we'll have another snap poll later on in the evening. So that's just something for you to do while I hand over to our main speaker for this evening, Johnny Mercer.
Thanks very much, Will, and thanks very much for having me tonight. And to speak on something which I've got to be honest, is I am really passionate about, because kind of the centre ground was my philosophy, right? It's how I won my seat in Plymouth. It's what I believe in politics, right? We've got to get more people involved in politics. We have to reach out beyond the current boundaries. And so I'm going to talk in 4 parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey into politics, right? I had a fairly abstract route into it. I'm then going to, sort of hold a mirror up, not in a sort of critical way as where we are at the moment, right? But the poorest people in this country need a good, modern, compassionate, competent centre-right government. all right? And I will hold up a mirror as to where we are at the moment, and then we'll talk about change, right? So everyone talks about kind of hope and change and how we actually do this stuff. But I'll talk about how we actually change, right? What things we can specifically do to actually make a change. Then I'm going to talk about what life is like after Brexit, right? Because for a lot of people who are involved in politics, right, Brexit is a defining issue for some, but for the vast majority it's not. Okay, there are more people in this party for the reasons I'm in this party. There are more people who vote for this party for the reasons I'm here. And so I want to go into that and talk about what could be in a sort of promised land beyond Brexit. But look, my journey into politics was fairly unconventional, all right? I never voted before I became an MP. I was, like many people, okay, I was driven by a sense of injustice. So you talk to any of my colleagues and they'll say, you know, the sector I was working in or whatever. I obviously fought in the war in Afghan. And for me, it was this injustice, if you like, between seeing what we were asking young people to do day after day, some extraordinarily sort of brave things, all right, and the contrast between that and some of the politicians who would come out and see us. It wasn't a negative thing, but I just thought there was a huge gap, right, between the sort of ethos and values you see represented day to day, often by young people well away from any sort of spotlight. Again, these well-meaning guys who came out, right, and would do stuff, but ultimately, when it came to it, they didn't really get it. And I felt, for me, what became really baked in was this veterans care thing. Okay, so it's hard to get over to people who haven't been in that environment, how it becomes this really sort of deep and passionate thing. But you know, you're kind of loading guys back onto helicopters, you know, dead or alive, whatever they may be. And after a while, you think to yourself, you know, I'm commanding these guys, and yes, you will be okay, right? Because the great British public have come over the hill in the shape of people like Health for Heroes, and I'm sure plenty of people in this room. Okay, you will be okay. But when it comes to your government, when it comes to the people who sent you here, they don't really get it. They do a great job on Remembrance Day, but they don't really get it. And I wasn't political. It didn't really sort of fire me up in that way. But I remember I did one job in particular, and I was briefing people like David Cameron and William Hague and Gordon Brown and what we were doing. And I looked at these guys, I thought, if I had your platform, right, if I was in politics, I would go on this day after day after day. Anyway, came back, you know, height of the conflict, 2010, finished that. And then in 2012, a fact that kind of passed a lot of people by in this country, right, more of our young people who served actually took their own lives and were killed in the conflict in 2012. And I thought to myself, do you know what, this is never going to change. This is never going to change unless one of us tries to do something about it. It was then that I thought, right, I'm going to try and be a Member of Parliament. Now look, when you go towards being a Member of Parliament, I had to choose a party, right? This is a bit of an anathema up here, where you have, you know, people sort of dine out on how long they've been sort of sticking envelopes in their local association. That is really important, right? But it's not the majority of people. The majority of people will vote in an election for different parties sometimes, right? Depending on what the offer is, who the Prime Minister is, and things like that. That was the reality for me. For me, that sort of, the burning injustice in Plymouth was around the welfare state. Okay, people were leaving my regiment, going on to £26,500 worth of benefits. They played their cards right. Average wage in Plymouth, £19,500. It wasn't the money that bothered me. It was kind of ripping, you know, the sort of the fight and the enthusiasm and the, you know, the desire to build a family and have a job and a career out of communities like mine. I thought this has to change. You can't blame people for doing it, for doing that on the system, right? But you've got to try and change it. So it's clear to me that, like millions of people in this country, right, I was a centre-right sort of non-voting conservative, if you like. And that's when I went to meet my local party, okay? And my local association, I sort of went to see them in North Plymouth, and having, the Tory party's never held this seat before, right? So it's not exactly like a queue out the door to be the MP. And I went to see them, and the youngest there was 79 years old. Okay, there were 7 of them. All right, 2 have since sadly passed away, but we have some more who are down there now. But what I'm trying to say is, you go there as a young person, you have these things you believe in, and you think, you know, this is not going to be the springboard into a career in politics I was hoping for. So look, they put me through my parliamentary assessment board, and I got selected. And when I was going through it, the Conservative Party at the time were sort of trying to steer people towards this 40-40 parade, if you remember that, back in 2015, right, where it was, we're going to hold on to 40 seats, we're going to win 40 seats, and we'll have a Conservative government. And in total fairness to people like Linton, right, that worked. We got a Conservative government. But for me, I didn't quite really understand that. I wanted to represent Plymouth. I wanted to represent my family, my friends, all right? And I basically said, yeah, I thought everybody did that. It turns out, obviously, people don't do that. The way it works is you get on this list, right, and then basically the seats come up, and you find one with a huge majority, and then you come up with some deep and meaningful, but ultimately totally fictitious connection to that seat, and you become a Tory MP for the rest of your life. Well, I didn't. That wasn't for me, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to represent Plymouth. So the Tory party did some polling for me, and they were like, "Okay, Johnny, you're mad because we've come back and the figures are 1%. Right? You have a 1% chance of winning that seat." I was like, "Okay, fine." I sort of went back, obviously, a little bit disheartened to Plymouth. But I looked at the election results, right? And some people vote Labour, some vote Tory. The vast majority were right in the middle, just like me. They just didn't vote. They had no touch points. They had nothing to do with politics. And I thought, do you know what? If the worst thing in this would not be losing. The worst thing would be going out and not being able to actually reach these guys and giving them something to vote for. I passionately believed you give these guys something to vote for, and they will come out and vote for you. And I'll talk more about that later. So, 2014, I left the army before my pension point. I actually went on to benefits. We sold the cars. I made the wife cycle the kids to school, which she still hasn't forgiven me for. I went and got a job on a building site. Okay, and then come 2014, end of 2014, I went out in Plymouth with my wife and 2 kids, and we worked out how many doors we could knock on during a single day. Right? And then we came back and we printed up this massive Google Maps of Plymouth, marked up every single house from like the satellite overlay. Okay, and we counted them all up, and we worked out back from the 7th of May. Worked out if we started 2nd of January, right, we would go and knock on every single door in Plymouth. And so the 2nd of January we started, and do you know what? It was an amazing experience, right? For if you leave, particularly an organisation like the military, or a specialist organisation within the military, right, which is quite a sanitised, quite a privileged environment, and you go and knock on people's doors, and you find out why they don't vote, right? What's gone wrong in their lives. And do you know what? The biggest thing for me was how there were a lot of people who, yes, have made a couple of bad decisions, but had a hell of a lot of bad luck. And that could be any one of us. And what they were looking for in politics was not kind of like the moon on a stick or some sort of economic plan that was going to solve all their work. They just wanted someone who cared, right? They wanted someone who was going to be their voice in Westminster, who was genuinely going to represent them. Not necessarily their party always first, right? But their voice, make them feel like they were part of the system. And I loved it, and I learned a hell of a lot. Basically everything I learned about politics was from that time. Anyway, we won in May 2015 and came to London. And look, I think to hold a mirror up to our party and where we are now, we have to be honest. Okay, we have to be courageous enough to be honest. People think that you come up here, right, you say things just because you want to be in the paper and all this stuff, and I can't emphasise how much that is simply not the case. Would I rather be back with my team sort of hunting terrorists off the back of a helicopter, or living in a hotel like Alan Partridge, away from my family and friends? It's because people like me actually believe in this that you have to hold up a mirror to what we see at the moment. And politics is tough. Politics is tough. Being an MP is really tough. All the nonsense you read about MPs, largely in the media, it is nonsense. Being in a political party is tough. Running a political party in what is a voluntary organisation, right? It's really, really hard. But the reality is, we serve the British people, okay? And at the moment, there is a seriously angry country out there, seriously divided, and families up and down this country. And we have to look at that and think, where are we going wrong? And for me, it's a bit of a dichotomy, because I come up to London, and there's some of you in this room will work for think tanks and so on, some really clever people who do a lot of analysis and look at the facts and figures, and they're like, Johnny, we've looked at this, right? But life in Plymouth is actually getting better, right? Life in the UK is getting better. Life in London, is getting better. More people in work and so on. And we all see at the end of the year, we all think we've had a really crap year, right? And then someone posts that thing on Facebook where it says, actually, humankind's living longer, we're all healthier, wealthier, and so on. But then I come to London, it's like a real dichotomy for me. And, and I walk along the street from Victoria to Westminster, right? And I see more homeless people every single week, right? I see more homeless people in Plymouth every single week. We've got a brilliant Secretary of State, Matt Hancock, down at Department of Health, who gets mental health. But I still get these horror stories coming in about people who've been sent miles out of their city to be treated for mental health. There are more children, right, in this country being taken into care today than there ever have been before. So I come in and I kind of have to ask myself, it is changing, but who is this country really changing for? And Brexit gave us a really good example of that, because in all of this argument, right, this sort of
polarising, theoretical purity argument about Brexit. Okay, people have failed to ask who voted for Brexit and why. Right? And to miss that now, I think, would be absolutely fatal. Was Brexit about taking back control? Yes, it was, but it was about people taking back control of their lives, okay, and people taking back control of their government. If you look at the data, okay, the poorer you were, the more likely you were to vote for Leave. If you were dependent on a state pension, you were more likely to vote Leave. If you were in council housing, if you were on a social housing waiting list, if you were out of work, all these factors, you were more likely to vote Leave. And, you know, for millions of people up and down this country, they had an opportunity to vote in something where they thought, okay, Westminster didn't really know what it was like to live in their shoes, right? But fundamentally didn't care what it was like to walk in their shoes. And it was, you know, you've got to remember for these people that government is, you know, for people like me, it's tiny. I can pay my tax. I never go to a doctor. I never, you know, lots of people in this room, you know, are pretty healthy and live in London and all the rest of it. For a lot of people, government's absolutely huge, right? It's their everyday. They're heavy users of the NHS. Social housing is a roof over their head, right? Free school meals is a meal on the table for their kids. Government is huge. And when it goes wrong, it absolutely decimates their lives, okay? And it was those people that gave the establishment, the government, a big kind of two fingers at that election, and they were right to do so. You look in places like Plymouth, where they voted 70% to leave, right? I spent a lot of time in my youth around the pubs and clubs in Plymouth. No one talked about the EU. So you've got to ask, did the EU represent something different to people, right? Was it talking about the establishment, was it about government, or was it about Europe? And it's pretty clear to me. And as politicians, we have just totally not kept up with that at all. Okay, and that's why we've got this democratic deficit. And there are two main bodies through which we do our politics, right? Political parties in this country, clearly we haven't kept up either. You've seen that over the last few weeks, right? I mean, any party, right, that does not have room in a voluntary organisation for good, centrist, moderate, modernising MPs needs to have a period of serious self-reflection. The Luciana Berger thing, for example, right? Anti-Semitism in the UK in 2019. Yes, that was a disgrace on the Labour Party, but it was appalling for us as well, because we went into election with these guys and we didn't beat this narrative hard enough, right? So that the sort of John McDonnells and so on of this world are consigned to the history bin where they deserve to be. So it's a reflection on us as much as anybody else. And I think Brexit is the ultimate kind of marker, if you like, for this sort of industry we've created, the inauthentic nature, right, of modern British politics. We kind of created this, profession of insincerity, if you like. That's what drove me into it, and that's what I think was the number one cause for Brexit. But look, how do we actually change, right? And I think, you know, I'm unashamedly optimistic on this front, because obviously everyone, you can see the maelstrom that's going on. I think it's a real opportunity. How do we change, right? 4 Ps. We're pretty thick in the army, so we have to remember everything by like the same letter. 4 Ps, right? People, right? People, policies, principles, and perspective. How we actually look at things, right? People, how we select people. Look, there's some amazing people on those green benches in the House of Commons, right? Don't believe everything you read in the paper. There's some amazing people, some great, modern, compassionate Conservatives, all right? What you're not going to do is hear them on the Today programme on Radio 4, all right? Every morning saying the same thing, all right? You're also not going to hear them in the debate in the House of Commons, where it's the same people saying the same things about Brexit they've said for the last 20 years. Where you will find them is, for example, working down in A&E in Sussex, like Maria Caulfield, who still works as a nurse, or campaigning on social housing, like Scott Mann in Cornwall, okay, or standing up, you know, and trying to get the government to stay on the right track, like Tracy Crouch did with fixed odds betting terminals. There were some brilliant people across that way, but you need to have a balance, right? And this job here in London is fundamentally different for people like me, who've had to go and win a seat and then go back on the weekend, right, and have to advocate on any given Sunday for the policy you've just voted for. That is a different job to being in a seat you're never going to lose, right? And all you're here to do is be in government and all the rest of it. I'm not saying you have this massive change of the guard, right? All I'm saying is you have to have the balance right, and the balance, in my view, is not right. And that's why we've hit a lot of the troubles we have today. Policy is seriously important. You can't just come out with some sort of branding exercise. You've got to have the policy, and good policy changes lives. Okay, but it's not the sacred cow of one particular party. Two of the policies have had the greatest effect somewhere like Plymouth, right? The income tax threshold. The Lib Dems actually brought that into the coalition in 2010, right? The minimum wage. The Tories were on the wrong side of the minimum wage argument for a long, long time. Okay, it's more about universal credit, for example. That's a huge opportunity for us, but because, and I'll comment on this briefly, but because of the way we've done it, people have kind of lost faith with what should be an enormously popular policy. And I tell you now, in communities like where I come from, the idea that people have a life on benefits is not popular. They want someone to have the courage to go and change that system, but we have to do it properly. But what's more important, and this is the critical bit, right, is you've got to think about what makes people go and vote. Right? How do we get people outside of our core who subscribe to Con Home, who read all the conservative emails and the rest of it? How do we get other people to vote for us? And you've got to think, what makes somebody go out and vote on a wet Thursday in May? Your average family in this country, right? Mum and a dad working all the hours God sends, 2 naughty kids who won't do their reading, don't want to go to school. What's going to make them interrupt their day and go and vote for something? And yes, it's going to be policy, right? They might look at the childcare limit hours or whatever. But actually bigger than that, it's going to be ethos and it's going to be values, right? What sort of country do they want to live in? Who do they want to be their Prime Minister? Let me just give you a couple of examples of late, I think, where we haven't got it quite right. I mean, I was at an amazing mental health institution last week, a secure unit. Okay, and yeah, they're the people that society doesn't want, right? Because they're rapists and murderers and so on. But, I see these guys and they are the long tail end of generations of abuse. Generations of abuse. And one of the nurses sat me down and she said to me, I'm still stunned every day I come to work, because if you have 2 people in this country, right, 2 of the same sex, 2 guys, they have the same upbringing, they go to the same school, they have the same money, they have the same job, right? One has a mental health problem, one does not. The one with the mental health problem, his life expectancy is 19 years less than the guy who does not have a mental health problem. In Britain in 2019. And what does that say about our values and our ethos? Okay, a month ago, our party was going to bring in legislation that retrospectively applied the 2-child limit to benefits, right? Basically, pushing hundreds of thousands of single mothers out on a limb. Okay, what values does that say that we have as a party? Universal credit. I mean, taking the money out of universal credit, seriously? Like, this is, like, they are the most vulnerable people in society. And yet we see it as a spreadsheet to take some money out. Prosecuting our veterans for serving in Northern Ireland. I could go on, but I won't. It's, it speaks to a set of values. And at the moment, never have values and ethos been so important, right, amongst our generation. You look at the way things catch fire now, the Me Too movement, things like this. Never before have ethos and values been important, not to the generation, look in the commercial sector as well. And people seem to have thought we've lost our way with this stuff. And I think we can change that by getting our values and our ethos back. The last thing is, is perspective. Right? One of the most frustrating things I find in this place is government policy is kind of done as though it's going on a leaflet at an election. So it's always, we put X amount of billion into this. We put X amount of billion into that. The reality, we're never going to change unless we have the courage to turn the telescope round and ask what it's actually like to be in those communities, right? What is it like to work as a mental health nurse in a conservative Britain? We've been in power 9 years. A conservative Britain in 2019. What's it like to be on a social housing list in 2019? What is it like to have a disabled son or daughter in 2019? And until we have the courage to actually reverse that telescope, ask what it's like, and mark ourselves by that, instead of coming up to House of Commons making all these announcements, mark ourselves by what it's like to live in these really challenging communities. If we do that, we can really change, and we can get people to vote for us. Finally, what's at stake, right? I totally accept that we're in difficult times, but I've had a consistent message all along. And we'll jokes about my interviews and so on. And yes, I am very honest, but I've also had a consistent message, and that is one of optimism. I think never before, okay, have the risks been so great, particularly coming into the next couple of weeks, right? But also never before have the rewards been so extraordinary. There is, you see one party going one way, and you see another party going the other, there is a massive centre ground, right, of young people like us who are just waiting to be set on fire by good policies, by good politics. And I think we can do that. Optimism in Westminster isn't easy. Okay, 2010, 2015, 2017, largely these elections were won on fear, if you remember. But, you know, I spend my time here, but then I go out into the country and I do groups like this tonight, and, you know, I've done 150 associations now, I've spoken up and down this country. And I see a country that doesn't really have, they don't feel like they have a reason to fear. They see the opportunities that are coming down. They're kind of excited about a modern, compassionate Conservative Party. The independent group that had just been set up, they've identified this centre ground, this really important centre ground. But they're united. Someone asked me today if they're going to succeed. They're really great guys, and they're my friends, a lot of them, right? But they're united only in what they oppose. They don't want Brexit, all right? I want to unite people around what actually we believe in, and we can then go and win the country. Policy, right? We have to get the policy right and the values to which they speak. Obviously, look, compassion has to be our centre issue, right? For those whom government is massive, the bottom 20%, we have to make it work. They will judge us on this. They are the ones who went and voted for Brexit. I find it extraordinary that my predecessors, you know, constantly on the TV at the moment, right, still going on about Brexit and how people are thick or stupid because they voted for Brexit. And they just don't get it. They can't understand and they can't compute why people voted for Brexit. I think we have to tackle the inequalities, but in a different way, in poverty, right? So poverty in this country, again, it's a bit of a Westminsterism, right? And, you know, I talked earlier on about how life's generally getting better. But you will hear, you know, the Prime Minister will say absolute poverty is reducing, Jeremy Corbyn will say poverty is going up. You know, the reality is that lots of governments over the years have tried to alleviate poverty in different ways. Increasing income, personal income, trying to get people either side of an arbitrary line. We have to have an absolute war on poverty. I have this dream, right, of rebranding the Tories as absolute poverty fighters, day in, day out. And, you know, because people think that we want to raise money. We want to raise money for our hedge fund mates and all the rest of it. That sort of thing genuinely repulses people like me who have no interest in that. But actually, if we could tell people we were doing this because we were going to war on poverty every day, the three main causes of poverty, right? Family breakdown, lack of work or lack of skills and education. And that was our strategy, right? And we prioritised that. And everything we did as a government had this thread of fighting poverty through it. Then people would come and vote for us because we have to face in this country huge challenges at the moment, right? The NHS, you know, is a sacred cow in this country, right? But it is, you know, we have to undergo change if it's going to be there for my kids. But no one is brave enough to have that discussion. And because there is no trust in the ethos or values of politicians, nobody sees a way out of it at the moment. Social care. Social care is in a real dark place at the moment. And yet we still haven't challenged that. Brexit is going to fundamentally change the economy in the UK, but no one has any faith in politicians to do that. I think if we get back to an ethos and a value so people understand why we're doing things, I think we can change and we can get people to vote for us. Last two things, I want to, we've got to get away from the old sort of looking at ourselves as a party and, you know, and the two-party system. It stays, right, because it's never going to change that side of things. But we have to go from this idea of being a party, right, to being an actual movement that's going to go out there, that's going to go out and win the country week after week. It comes back to that centre ground, all right? And I genuinely feel, with Corbyn going, this is not a hard left country, right? Neither is it hard right. Most people our age, right, who are more connected than ever before. That, you know, even those who have nothing to do with these, everyone will see. Someone comments on Facebook every day, right? I don't comment on politics, but, and then they write a big tirade against politics, right? So everybody is more connected than they ever have been before. There's this huge centre ground waiting to be set on fire. I think you just drop a match into it and it will catch fire, and we can go and promote these policies all over the country. Fighting poverty, reform public services. Remember, people who use public services, that bottom 20% that I talked about, we have to get it right. And finally, look, politics is changing. you can look at things like Donald Trump, right? And you can look at Jeremy Corbyn to a lesser extent, but you can kind of look at this and you can laugh and you think it's all crazy, right? But you can't sneer at it, because they've managed to do what we as Conservatives have not managed to do yet, which is inspire people to go out and vote who haven't voted for us for a long time. Look at the polling, okay? Our vote age just continues to go up at a faster rate than our time in power, right? Our vote is getting that much older, that much more quickly, all right? But these guys, Corbyn, Trump, the others, they show you that politics is changing. It's like a horse that's just bolted out the stable, okay? And the current generation, we're all kind of standing around blaming each other as to who left the door open, right? It's gone already, and they've been overtaken by events. So we either have to, as younger people, as younger moderate centre-right Conservatives say, yeah, okay, we'll kind of leave that, Corbyn can go running after this horse, and so on. But it'll come back, and the policies will fundamentally change this country and what it means to be British and live there. And people like me, I'm afraid, are not here for that. Okay, we have to go and get that thing, okay, and we have to saddle it and we have to form it for what we believe in, what the poorest people in this country deserve and what they believe in. And if we can do that, right, if we can harness this amazing power that young people have these days, that our generation has, the sort of energy, the incredible energy in these events, we can genuinely go and change the country and we can change the world. Thanks very much.
Hand over to our panellists for some quick responses, and then we'll have a Q&A with the audience. And we'll do, as we always do at these events, we'll try and do a bit of reverse Q&A as well. So I'm going to ask the panellists, just to get you thinking, to ask some questions of the audience as well as the other way around, if that's right.
Great.
So Craig, if I can come to you, and then to you.
First of all, I'd like to, on behalf of everyone, welcome everyone here and say that we're delighted to have you. Thought it was incredibly thought-provoking and went a long way to demonstrating what is lacking in British politics, actually, from my perspective, in terms of how you reach out to the centre ground, both in terms of how you were communicating and what you were saying. And I think the bit at the end that you referenced about Trump and Corbyn in particular, and I would throw Nigel Farage to an extent into that, and it's related to all of the other things you were saying, which is that I think the world is crying out for authenticity. And your point about, at the moment, politics is essentially a spending contest. Who can spend more on this and that? Who can do this by one more than the other? Is the politics of Gordon Brown. It is the politics of 1997. And we are still trapped as a political class, and frankly, Will probably have some thoughts on this as well, as a government, as a civil service, which makes it very difficult to change when you're in government. So as much as we can talk about ideas, and you can stand up and say all of the things that you said, most of which I think are very compelling and point in the right direction, it is very difficult sometimes, harder than it ought to be, to reach to the centre ground from government. Because for all political parties are terrible at realising what is going on in the world around them and adapting accordingly. In my view, the civil service is worse, and you can get trapped by that, particularly in the Treasury. And unfortunately, the Treasury is where a lot of power is, and therefore, if you have a politician that is of a mind not to want to do things, the Treasury will quite happily not let them do things. And so there is a difference between a political chancellor, and you mentioned a lot of things that a political chancellor on the Conservative side did that were wrong, but he was a political chancellor and sought to do things. But it is rare that you can get trapped by what is going on in the Treasury. One thing that I thought you didn't mention, I can't think of a P that would capture it for you, which may be why you didn't, is all of the things I think you said were correct, but they didn't address where we communicate. And so, again, there is a problem in political parties and in the media and in government, which is obsessed with communicating in the traditional ways. Actually, you can call it papers if you like. We can go P for papers, which is basically through newspapers and through broadcast. But there is and then we thought as a party we'd nailed it because we managed to do some Facebook targeted advertising in 2015 and we won a load of seats. It turned out in 2017 that didn't work anymore. But nobody is having a conversation around what can we do really politically on YouTube? What can we do to advertise or get to people on Twitch? What are we going to do about smart speakers? No one is having any of those conversations, and in government you're so wrapped into how we altering the headlines and how we're altering the 6 and 10 that we don't think about it. And reaching people who aren't voting for us is about reaching them and not thinking that they are reading the outlets that we are already engaged in. So that would be one to add. If I can think of a P by the end of it that works for you, then I'll try and do that.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Craig. Laura.
I loved your optimism. I'm going to be a cynical journalist and say that the one thing you did mention was membership of the Conservative Party, and I think that is where you have a real problem. And of course the media's been reporting about purple momentum, and I'm sure some of that has been exaggerated because of course that is what we do. But I think it is fair to say, because I cover the Conservative Party, I speak to a lot of Conservative Association members, chairmen. These are the people that select candidates, that will vote for the next leader of the Conservative Party. The majority appear to me to be small state, low tax Thatcherites. And a lot of young people who want to find a political home in the centre ground don't resonate with that, so they don't become members of the Conservative Party. You don't become a member of the Conservative Party, you don't have a say in electing your next leader. Takes me on to the next point, leadership. How do you get back into the centre? How do we reclaim the Tory party? It's leadership. And there's a problem there too, because I think a lot of centre-minded people who voted for Tony Blair, for example, are disillusioned with the centre-left. They blame him for Iraq, they think he was too slimy, they don't like him anymore, they don't trust it. David Cameron, a lot of people will blame him for Brexit as much as he did in terms of the compassionate image of the Conservative Party. They will blame him for Brexit. Nick Clegg, for the demise of the Liberal Democrats, for betraying voters who believed that they really would abolish tuition fees. Don't believe these smooth centre types, the Macrons, the Trudeaus. I don't know what the answer is here, because we've now polarised ourselves in this country. People have gone to extremes, not necessarily because they believe in that, because they want to stop something else. And perhaps there is now a space. Ironically, I think it's the centre-left of this country that's more fertile territory for people to go and claim. I think Labour are in huge problems in a way that the Conservatives aren't, because I think the Conservatives have this instinct of self-preservation that in the end always kicks in a way that the Labour Party doesn't. So leadership is crucial. And actually there is someone who, again, the media seem to treat like this sort of Scottish angel, and she's of course not. The circumstances in Scotland are very different to here. I'm not trying to compare them. I'm not trying to suggest that if Ruth Davidson came down to London and became leader of the Conservative Party, she'd be able to solve it. I don't think she's been challenged perhaps in the way that some cabinet ministers have here by the media. But she has talked a lot about how young Conservatives, for young people in this country, it's become countercultural to vote Conservative. The Conservatives are mean. It's not cool to vote Tory. No one really wants to admit that they vote Tory if they're under the age of 40. And that is a real problem. And she's really tried to position herself in the centre. And she's been bold in the same way that you have been bold in speaking out against Theresa May and policies of her own government. So, Ruth Davidson's been addressing one fundamental question, the NHS, and she's been saying, actually, no, I don't think we should give, more tax breaks to the Middle England. I think we should be investing more money in the NHS. People liked that. People liked it when she said, I'm not sure we should have a cap on migration. I think we should take students out of figures. People seem to like that. So it is going on already. There are Conservatives in your party who are addressing it, who are actually doing it successful. If you look at what Ruth Davidson has done in Scotland, it is pretty extraordinary that she has now got the Tories ahead of Labour for the first time in 60 years. I think Tony Blair really recently said, Labour in Scotland, you've got a problem, because Ruth Davidson has come up here and she's basically taken the centre ground off you. We have a real issue here. So my very simple answer, and that might seem obvious, but I just think in the world we're living in now, is it's going to be about the next leader of the Conservative Party. We are just talking about Tories tonight. I'm obviously apolitical as an objective journalist, but I think that it's going to be about who leads the Tory party, and I'm sure we will get onto this because I'm intrigued to know what you think about who that should be. Should it be Boris? Could you put a Boris with a more moderate person and balance everything out? Brexit isn't going to be over when we finally get this deal through. There are going to be at least 2 more years of discussions over the future economic and security partnership that we have with the EU. The next leader is going to have those conversations with the EU. I'm afraid this debate is going to carry on for a very, very, very long time. And that's why talking about the membership, I think, is so vital. Anyway, I've waffled on for too long. I will stop.
Thank you very much, Laura. So we will definitely get into questions of leadership, and we'll get into questions of membership and digital as well. But before we do that, I'm just going to reveal exclusively the results of our first poll. 46 of you, which isn't everyone, so we'll be watching next time we do the poll, answer the poll. Oh, that's just not giving me the answers. Katie, what's happened? I don't know quite what's happened. We will later reveal the results of our poll. But so let's go straight into Q&A. So, Johnny, you said a lot of things there, and you got very deep into some personal questions. One of the things that I think struck me about what you said was that you are not someone who previously had voted, or certainly there have been periods when you were a non-voter. And you've kind of recently been kind of in the media talking about whether or not people should or could vote for kind of MPs today. And I just wonder, could you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what do you think the Conservative Party, or indeed any politician, should be doing to get the votes of people beyond what you said just now? Like, what's the one thing that you think is the most important to actually win over those voters? What were the people that you saw on your doorstep in Plymouth asking for?
I don't actually think people who are looking for something to vote for are looking for an awful lot, because what they've had over the years, in my view, and what drove me into politics was not a particularly great offering, and actually people are not asking, like I said, for the moon on a stick, right? They're just wanting someone who's going to represent them, someone who's going to be their voice. And I know, I do disagree with almost everything you said, and I'll tell you for why. Because that is the classic Westminster journalist view, and I totally respect it, right? But in my experience, it's completely wrong. So the Conservative Party in the UK is not stuffed full of middle-aged white guys who are harking after Margaret Thatcher. Actually, I've found hundreds of young people who work in social care, who just want a moderate, compassionate Conservative Party, who are sick of the direction we're going in at the moment. People are not fixated at all. Yes, they're concerned about who the next leader is, but they look at what's going on, and they actually think it's more important what we stand for, okay, and what the next turn of the handle is in terms of our culture and where we're going to go. And the membership thing is absolutely critical. We do have an issue with membership, there's no doubt about it. But because the way we're going around it, and it does come down to the Prime Minister, okay, but at times, or whoever's leading, whoever it may be, there is a real problem at the moment around money in politics, okay? So in the Conservative Party at the moment, okay, 90% of our money comes from 34 people, right? That is not politics, that's a hedge fund, right? And people like me who come in this and work in this field because we actually believe in it and not here for that. Right? That has to fundamentally change. How do you change it? You look at some of the things they've done in the US, right, where they've got much more higher volumes of people giving, okay, much smaller amounts. This idea that people don't want to have a stake in their society is rubbish. They're much more transient now, but they'd still be willing to give. They'd still be willing to give a small amount to invest in a set of ideas and an ethos and a set of values that they can vote for. But we don't make it easy for them. We make giving really difficult. We're almost sort of tone deaf in the way we campaign in this country. You've seen again, I'm afraid, a little bit of it around knife crime this week. And yes, I know, Will's very, very good on this. And we have to have a clear-eyed, non-emotional view of what's going on. But we are politicians, right? And we represent public sentiment. And we need to be seen to do everything possible we can do. And I'd say, look, how do we get more people to vote for us? In Plymouth, okay, and that election I got given a 1% chance. Last election, 2017, the Tories got hammered, particularly by Labour, right? My majority went up nearly 5-4 against Labour. So people are not looking
for incredible things, right? They're just looking for that authenticity. Like I said, it's become a profession of insincerity. And you've got these stereotypes around what's going on in political parties. I think they're about 5 years out of date. And some of the stuff Craig talks about is really interesting around smart speakers, how we communicate. And you're absolutely right. Like, I know MPs who will sit there during the week and think, oh, I just keep giving these articles to the papers, because they're going to print it. I've got to be honest, like 3 or 4 people in your constituency will read that. It just doesn't matter. What goes on in the papers, yes, it's exciting, it doesn't really matter. Okay, the stuff around Facebook, all this other stuff, this digital media, how you communicate your message, that's the battleground that we have to get into.
Fantastic, thank you. I think we're going to open up to Q&A from the audience. I think we do have a microphone or two that we can pass around. Who wants to ask the first question? We've got one up at the front, and I'll come to you next.
Thank you. My name is Martin Lejeune, and although I work in politics, I'm also a member of a local Conservative party. And it's with that from that perspective, I ask my question. It is true, as our Financial Times colleague pointed out, that the Conservative Party has a small and ageing membership. I think you're implying, but tell me if I'm reading this wrong, that actual membership of the party is less important than involvement with Conservative values. Do you think there's a way in which we could reconfigure the party in such a way that you don't have to buy the full package? That you become involved in Conservatism without necessarily attending every branch meeting, every AGM dinner, paying a subscription, because that's a rather old-fashioned way of organising things in a time when people have the right to pick and mix their lives a bit more, and they're very cause-driven in the way that possibly Conservatives were not 20, 30 or 40 years ago. So I just wonder if reinvention of the party might be a solution to the kind of point you made. And one throwaway remark, if you want a P that covers your point, I think platforms would do quite nicely, actually. So if you want to add a fifth one, I'd go with that.
People into the party. I remember when I joined the party, right, you pay your 25 quid and then you get given a sack of leaflets that needed delivering last week, and you're off on your own with a map, hand it in when you're done. Nobody in their right mind is going to join that these days, because there are so many better things to do with your life, right? So we can't just look at that and think, oh, we're losing our values and all the rest. We think, how do we change? How do we innovate so that people actually are excited? They want to be part of a party. They want to come to the social because they're going to get something out of it. They get more than, you don't just pay your 25 quid and forget about it. You get voting rights on certain things. You get a voice in policy. And yes, we used to do this, but what I have found in this party is that a lot of it is kind of personality driven. Okay, so if you're in with the current people running it, okay, you'll get all manner of these positions. I actually think a lot of these positions should be far more voted in by the members. And then you have your integrity with your movement, because we've got to get away from a party, we've got to build a movement towards what we actually, that's what Corbyn's done. That's what Trump did. They built a movement around the stuff they cared about. That's the only way we're going to do this. We've got to get away from this idea of, yes, the party structures exist, but the movement has to be the Conservatives. This is why I don't join any of these groups, Conservatives for this, Conservatives for that. The movement has to be the Conservative Party, right? And you'll set the country on fire. But you've got to get your values, your ethos, what people get from an organisation. It's a voluntary organisation. Some people act as though they've got some divine right to be here and give diktats and all the rest of it. This is a voluntary organisation. People can walk away from it, right? So we've got to give them something to vote for, something they want to be in the Conservative Party for. And we can do that, and people will come. And that's all I've done in Plymouth, right? We've got hundreds of members in Plymouth, hundreds of members. And Plymouth, my seat has never been a Tory seat, right? It's always been Labour in the north of Plymouth. And now I've got hundreds of members, my majority goes up, right? And there's nothing, I've got to be honest, there's nothing particularly special about me, right? It's because people want something. They want something from politics. You give it to them and you'll go.
Can I pick up on that? I think what you talked about both today and a bit in interviews this week and so on, it actually amounts to renewal. But renewal takes a long time. And you can talk, you have spoken about people with huge majorities who don't have to go out and fight and therefore might be slightly disconnected from the things that you're talking about. And I describe the politics that we're still fighting as the politics of 1997. If you look at how Labour got to 1997. It began in sort of 1983.
Yeah.
And you're an impatient man, but do you accept that this might take 15 years and also might involve a painful period in opposition?
So the party has to make a decision. And why have the Tories been in power for the last 70 of the last 100 years? Right? Because they've always slightly ameliorated themselves to meet the challenges of the day. So this Prime Minister is leaving before the next election. Okay? And we have to, you're right, a lot of it comes down from the leadership. We have to make a decision. The party will make a clear decision as to whether or not they are going to go with someone who everyone's talking about now, right? But the country may think it's kind of all the same. Or we're going to try and do that hardest of things in power, right? Which is totally renew ourselves as a brand, as a movement, as a party, and go for someone completely different that no one's talking about. That is a clear decision point for the party, right? And this is why we have to get members in. And we have to get people signed up so they can vote in this stuff when it comes down the line. You know, people like me have to make sure it's represented in the political party of Westminster because we have these rules we get down to 2 and all the rest of it. But it's a clear decision, right? The party will make it. The result of that will lead to whether or not we have to go into opposition and regroup, and we go into a period of Jeremy Corbyn, which personally I don't think this country will forgive us for 20 years, or we have the courage to do it now. And we break out of the Westminster bubble, we get the hell out of London, where they say you have to have run a department, been in the cabinet, done all this wonderful stuff, delivered leaflets for 20 years, and then you can think about being Prime Minister. We get out to the country, and we're like, what do you want? What do you want? Because we're here to serve you as politicians, right? So what do you want in your next Prime? Every time I speak out, right, I get hundreds, literally thousands of letters, loads online, all the rest of it, right? It's got nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with this massive centre-right conservative heart out there that is dying to be represented in Westminster. And you tap into that, and I think you'll fly.
Nora, is that something you agree with? Do you believe that there is this kind of conservative heart to this country which is just failing to join the Conservative Party as members and failing to engage with the party electorate?
I think it's fair to say there are a lot of people that feel politically homeless, which is why Heidi, Sarah, Anna's decision to leave really hit a nerve. And I had lots of friends texting me going, what's this mean? Is this going to be a party? What do you think? Not without any policies, without them actually really saying anything. I think I take your point, they're united in opposition to something, and that's what unites them. I don't know how they'll go on in the future beyond Brexit. It triggered something, it really triggered something. And I do think political leaders are so powerful. People really do look at someone and it makes them want to go out and campaign, and it makes them feel something. I think if there was a new leader of the Conservative Party that made people feel something, they might suddenly feel like perhaps they were on the centre-right in a way they haven't. It's true to say, I don't think a lot of people do think, where am I? Am I on the centre-right, the left?
No.
I don't think a lot of people in the pub sort of go, Craig, where are you? You know, where are you on the spectrum? I don't think people think like that. They really, really don't. They don't give themselves those labels. They just sort of know what they feel. And so I think if someone can make them feel something, you're right. I don't think that the Conservative Party are dead. I don't think it's over. I think there is a chance to rebrand. I don't know though if that can be done with the membership that exists at the moment in terms of who they choose. Do you think it is possible? But equally, I think you could see someone very powerful coming in on the left and taking the centre-left ground, which again, as I said earlier, I think would be more fertile.
Fantastic. We've got one more question here, which I pointed to earlier, which was so just the gentleman there on the second row.
Hello, Sahil Shah. As the child of British East African immigrants that came here and who are more or less lifelong Conservative voters, small business owners, medium business owners, always saw the Conservative Party as the party of commerce, enterprise, social mobility, came here with nothing to their hands, now hire dozens of people around the country. Do you think there's a role for the Conservative Party, especially talking about young people where there's sort of fetish, there's such a desire for entrepreneurship, for innovation, for that whole area, for the Conservative Party to really sort of take hold of that zeitgeist and sort of drive forward and say that we understand what your needs are, we know what you're looking to do, we are the party of business, we're the party of commerce, new ideas, moving things forward, where it's something I've seen as, to be honest, a slight disappointment that I've not seen as much focus on it within the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a more of a role the Conservative Party could take? Do you think it's something that young people care about at this point in time? What do you think can be done here, just to see the party that my parents have voted for over the past 40 years, really?
Yeah.
And as I know, much of the other immigrant community have done very much the same way.
Yeah, look, I think, people like you are exactly, this should be our target audience, right? We've kind of lost this thing around aspiration. We've got people like me involved in this party. The left, there's a very clear way of thinking on the left. When it comes to stuff, there's a very clear way of thinking on the right. But we have kind of, and Brexit has largely dominated this and kind of conflated the message, right? And then you've had this, what you've seen is a sort of complete breakdown across the pitch, where the key messages, like for reasons that people like you in the party, just get lost and drowned out by the same people every day talking on Radio 4 about the same stuff, Brexit. The same people saying the same things they've said for the last 20 years. I do think there's some amazing stuff that goes on in this area. Look at Rob Halford, right, and how he champions apprenticeships and the stuff he genuinely believes in. It's not a game for him, he genuinely believes in it, right? And that is, for me, that's the heart of the Conservative Party. You can go and hear these people and they will get a good say on the media, and I really don't mean to knock the media, but you will get the same people on the media because they argue, right? They say the same thing and everyone can say, oh, he said this, he said this. In the reality of the country, everyone's bored of it. No one's interested at all. Okay, there are amazing people like Rob Halford who are campaigning in seats like that, who shows that we are still the party of aspiration. Okay, that we need to do everything to encourage wealth creation, if you like, right? But it has to be done with the ethos and values that I talked about, turning us into poverty fighters. So why are the Tories doing this? Why are the Tories making it easier to grow business? Why are they making, why are they fiddling with the tax system in this way? It's because they are making more money for the public purse, right? So that our bottom 20%, their living standards go up. And that's how we judge ourselves. Not how much we put into it, £20 billion into whatever, right? How it actually feels like to live in that community. How it feels like to come to this country and set up a business, right? And I think, all I'd say is just stick with it, right? Because this whole thing, this whole Brexit, I think it's great. Because it's like a massive wave washing everything out, right? And then everything's going to reset. And I think politics is going to change, and that's why I came into it. I came into it because I didn't like the way it happened, and I think we're on the cusp of really exciting change, and you'll feel at home again in our party.
Or just in defence of journalism, you are right. It's the same voices. In defence of journalism, I have a list, and I call it the silent majority, and it's full of MPs that I have to take to coffee, for lunch, who I want to meet, who I have met. The issue is that often when you go to them and ask for a comment or their view, they're reluctant to give it. It is often the ones with the excuse. I really do, and the FT really does try.
I know, it's
to strike a balance, and it's hard. And often those sort of more sensible, moderate ones are scared of the media and they don't want to talk.
And I actually think we should ban off-the-record comments, right? Because so you saw last weekend, the Sunday Times, right? So you got 5 really brave cabinet ministers having a go at Amber Rudd. Not one of them put their name to it. No. Right? Not one of them. You go in that tea room, and it's I think some of them are a little bit spineless, and you guys should call them out on it. But that's your job, not mine.
Craig, you former press secretary to Prime Minister, what do you think of that?
Banning off the record comments.
Because you can say anything. You can say anything.
Yeah.
Totally unaccountable.
There'd be a lot. The thing with off the record is people are more candid, and you can stand things up without associating with them. I take your point on the Amber Rudd story.
It's bollocks. If they mean something, say it and believe in it, or don't say it and write a different story.
But then a lot of people just you would never know what was going on. You wouldn't get to the truth of what was going on, I think. But look, there is a balance. There is a balance to be struck. 5 anonymous people going for 1 female.
It's basically like bullying. If you had that in another workplace, right? We used to have this thing in just really quick, really boring, honest story, right? We used to go on exercise at Sandhurst. You used to come back. You used to have Slater mates. They've banned them now, right? But all your colleagues wrote anonymous comments about you, and I tell you, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
And you cannot have that in a national paper dictating policy and what's going on. I think it's just genuine cowardice, and it shouldn't happen.
You're also right in some regards, and it's part of the entire problem, which is it doesn't happen in any other part of the paper. So you could not get a business leader slagging off another business leader or the way they were doing business and report that. People would pursue that. You could not, as a journalist, you get told not to use anonymous letters of complaints, be that harassment or something, against a business leader or an employer, because if they're anonymous, you don't know whether it's true or not. You've got no way of finding it. So I'm slightly sympathetic to your point, but I think it becomes slightly self-perpetuating actually. And I did realise, because it's part of the reason why I left the media, but I didn't realise until I left the media how much of a problem the Westminster bubble is. And it's only by leaving that you can tell. Likewise, it's only by leaving government communications can you tell that government communications doesn't really know anything about modern day communications. You don't have the brain space in there to be able to look at it and go, are we up to date with the modern world? Because every day you're dealing with 5 cabinet ministers saying something off the record, or worse actually, 3 cabinet ministers breaching collective cabinet responsibility and say something that is not, government policy, and then you're in Downing Street going, well, what do I do about this?
But then couldn't the PM clamp down on that?
A lot of this comes down to leadership. Of course it does. But you just
there are no consequences.
Yes, I know, but now it's a bit of a joke, right? So you could literally write an unnamed Tory source said Johnny Mercer sleeps with his cat in the hotel, and that would get printed. I don't actually, but that would get printed, right? And that is a ridiculous state of affairs, because what the country do need, right, is clever journalists. And some of the best work I've done here has been with brilliant journalists. There's some brilliant journalists. What they do need is holding a government to account, right, for the poorest people in this country with some of the stuff that's gone on. And the trouble is, you do that well, but if you guys do the other stuff as well, no one reads it, everyone thinks it's a bit of a joke. Do you see what I mean? So there's a really important role to be got there. And obviously you don't represent all journalists, but you get my point.
I'm going to bring to a close the
we could just have a whole new
politics and journalism. We're going to take a couple more questions, but I do now have exclusively the results of our poll. And the good news is that the delay led a number of you to give your views, which we hadn't done before. So which of the following do you think politicians should prioritise to improve their relationship with young people? In last place is more young people should be MPs. So we've got a room of people who don't particularly want to go into Parliament. That's good.
Very wise.
Yeah,
very sensible.
Secondly, so in second last place, lots of you don't agree with Craig, because only 6% of you said that people should use digital more. In third last place was younger MPs should be given more prominent roles. Actually, that was equal third with they should speak more like normal people. In second place, they should get out of Whitehall more, but far and away the winner, with 50% of you, was they should do more to address the real concerns of young people. And I think that's fascinating. I think that really goes to the heart of some of our broken politics and the huge generational gap at the last general election. It's not about campaigning tactics, not about political sympathy. It's about the fact that young people feel like they're not being taken seriously enough. So thank you very much for doing that, and we will move on to a further poll towards the end of the evening, which will actually go to something that Johnny just mentioned, party funding. But if we can take a couple more questions. So we've had this guy at the front has had it for a while, and then there are 2 at the back. We'll take 3 in one go, just to make sure that we get through as many questions as possible. So James, down at the front here, if that's okay.
Johnny Mercer,
Hey, buddy.
I'm incorrect that obviously what you've said that I've had enough of people poor leadership, ideological and technocratic debates about Brexit. We need to address genuine issues. For example, it could be crime, it could be the issue of low wages and high house prices. These disproportionately, especially house prices, affect young people and exist regardless of what happens with Brexit. But I know of a former senior Conservative councillor who basically mocked young people's concerns about house prices to myself, and I was very disconcerted. It was after our 2017 election debacle, and just felt as if I just didn't know what to say to him.
Okay.
Obviously, being a family friend is a little bit difficult. But the reality of this, we have this culture war over Brexit. Brexit will have economic problems, which could obviously affect marginalised people you talk about. At the same time, marginalised people feel they have nothing to lose for voting for Brexit. How can the Conservative Party deliver a Brexit, regardless of which way you would want to go, without either making the poor poorer, or upsetting the social and cultural values of younger people? Because there are people out there who do feel bruised by Brexit.
Okay.
I think that we have an image of.
So there's in my experience, there's an just to
make sure we get through them. So there were two questions right next to one another on, I think, the fifth row up, if that's okay. Either of you can go first, and then Johnny will come back to you.
Yeah, great.
Hi, my name's Will Collahan. As you guys may have seen in the Times this morning, there was quite a big investigation into the issue of tax avoidance of the richest 1% in this country, and it is still a massive issue that a lot of people, there's a lot of unpaid tax that's going around. Do you think that the Conservative Party has the stomach to back a leader that will genuinely combat tax avoidance, especially in the richest 1% and in major corporates?
Okay, fantastic.
And so my question, almost interestingly, comes off the back of the poll in terms of tackling real issues for young people. You spoke about earlier the fact that the core voters for the Conservative Party are a lot older. To what extent do you feel like the party could be strong enough to champion and put first those policies for young people, and maybe putting messages of economic prosperity to the back of the agenda, and instead just solely championing and voicing those policies for young people rather than those kind of going for the over 55s, for example, during an election?
Sure. So I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we put economic prosperity sort of to the back, because we've kind of lost this skill in politics, right? You kind of get any politician on stage, you can literally like switch them on and you know what they're going to say, right? We've lost this ability to go out and advocate for what we believe in, right? So actually we should go and advocate for wealth creation, right? Because we have a world-class NHS in this country that has to be paid for. We have public services that are an absolute lifeline to a lot of people in this country. And you come back to my point in the speech, if you flick the telescope around now, what's it like working in public services in this country at the moment? Honestly, it breaks my heart. You see on TV the cops at the moment, they should be ours, right? They care about their communities, they believe in law and order, the party of law and order. And you look at them asking for more resources now, something has gone badly wrong. So look, I think wealth creation, we need to get away from giving that a bad name. I think we don't want to go in that direction. But this thing about getting young people to vote, right? And you only have to see, I really hope Will didn't come up with this idea, but you only have to see how far we have to go, right? When last year they were going to bring out a Nando's cards for young people, right? For me, nothing highlights how far we have to go than that. You give young people, something to vote for, they will come and vote for it. But why would you go and vote Tory at the moment? You look at the housing market, right? You've got absolutely no chance of buying your own house. Right? You look at, public transport is massively used by young people like me who fail the driving test 7 times, right, to get to a job, right? And it doesn't work for people at the moment. You have to give young people something to vote for. They are not stupid, all right? And I think we're getting to a point now where people are beginning to look at things like Corbyn and think, yeah, obviously this might well be pie in the sky. So there's an opportunity to go and engage these people. But you have to get it right. Tuition fees, right? At the moment, the government's looking at a policy reducing them to £6,000. The data will show you that only benefits the more wealthy, right? Why haven't we done something about the interest rates? Why are we not going after stuff that genuinely matters to young people? Give young people something to vote for, they will come out and vote. To your point on Brexit, I've got to be honest, look, Brexit is going to be this massive reconfiguration in this country. And yes, young people, and particularly in London, not too happy about it. But I've got to be honest, London is like a different country to the rest of the country. Where I'm from, deprived communities, it's a different place. And people have voted for Brexit, and they're very clear they want Brexit to happen, generally, across the divide in communities like mine. We've got to stop looking at it like it's going to be a disaster, right? And that's where this government's like gone wrong. I don't want to say anything negative, but well, it's always been, how do we mitigate this problem that these really irritating people who are thick that we gave the vote to, how do we mitigate this problem they've given us? Whereas everyone who voted for it is like, this is a huge opportunity, right? So the government's come back and they've been like, oh, well, if we do this and this isn't going to change too much. Everyone else is like, I want it to change. I want this country to reconfigure. I want it to be easier to employ people, so I don't get in cheap labour, and the sort of uncontrolled immigration has an effect on the labour market, right? And they've looked at this European project and they've decided it's got too big and it's not for them, right? And we have to either decide that we're the establishment and these people are thick and didn't know what they were voting for, or actually we need to get with a programme and start delivering as a government so that people actually come and vote for us.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, just listening to this and then and keen to throw this out backwards in a reverse Q&A fashion actually, is to whether the pursuit of the centre ground is actually, as Laura kind of touched on, also the politics of the 1990s, and whether the reconfiguration of politics that we're seeing is actually a polarisation and that the centre ground isn't there, and you could step forward into the centre ground and launch a fierce bid for the centre ground and found yourself really lonely with two massive groups on either side.
Yeah. I think because people saw it before, and you touched on it with Cameron and Blair, people saw it and they thought, they believe that, right? But it's to get them elected. Actually, if you get people in who are authentic, and we created, as I said, this profession of insincerity. Cameron was authentic, right? But he great guy. He had a ceiling, I'm afraid. Okay, went to Eton, all that good stuff. He had a ceiling. Actually, and people think you're doing it just to get elected, or just to look good, or stuff you don't. The poverty argument's really interesting. How people want to do stuff around poverty, they feel like they want to do it, so they increase personal income and stuff like that, instead of focusing on the real causes of poverty, that we could go to war and fundamentally change the Tory party. So no, I don't think this is a hard left country. I don't think it's a hard right country. There is a silent majority. There is a silent majority in the middle, and you've got to remember they are the biggest. They are one of the biggest groups that are up for grabs. And when I went to get elected in Plymouth, and they gave me a 1% chance, I was like, right, that is my ground. I'm going to dominate that ground, and I'm going to make sure these guys come out to vote. And you only need 10 or 15% of them. Because why do I know? Because I was one of them, right? I never voted. And I would have voted if someone like me turned up and didn't ask me, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think about Ed Miliband, right? But actually said, tell me what's going on in this community, right? What do you want for your kids? And then you'll find out, yes, they want a job for their kid, but they're more interested in the infrastructure, because they don't just want a job, they want a career. They want a bigger company to come to Plymouth, right? So they can have a career in a city like Plymouth. And that's where I learned all my politics. And I'm afraid I will be a kind of ruthless voice for people like that, because I do genuinely believe it. This country has been too London focused for a long time, and a lot of that came out in Brexit.
On this point, it's interesting to look at what's happening in America and what the Democrats are doing to take on Trump, and the debate they are having internally about the candidate that they select. Do they go for a kind of further left candidate or a more central one to take him on? What's happening on America is actually not so far from what is happening here. There's a little FT twist.
You look at Spain and that's split four ways.
Yeah.
You'd get decimated in the dead centre in Spain.
Thank you.
Luckily, we're not in Spain. Craig, you touched on this, but I think actually it would be quite helpful to do a bit of reverse Q&A right now. And actually, so asking questions to the audience. You've got no disrespect to those that aren't, but the vast majority of people here are young people. They reflect young people's views. Do you guys have questions for them?
Who do you think should be the next leader of the Tory party?
That was actually going to be my question.
Sorry.
So,
rhymes with Mercer.
Does anyone have
shout out answers?
So put your hands up. We'll come around a few.
And why?
Yeah, we'll come around a few people here.
I'm not going to nail my colours to the mast. I'm just going to say that I think you're looking at
can we do the microphone just so we get
government trying to. I'm not going to nail my colours to the mast, but you're looking at third-term Conservative government asking for a fourth term. In all of history, there's no parliamentary example of that happening by someone becoming more purist, Liz Truss. But if you want to do that and to keep out Jeremy Corbyn, which is quite imperative on a Conservative MP, if you become more purist, to be responsible for that, you have to look at somebody who's not going to be tainted by 9 years of being in government and being on TV defending policy. So I think third term into fourth, you need to look at 2010, 15 or 17 intake. 2010 or 15. 17 would be bold.
Okay, I'm going to ask the people to nail their colours to the mast, because I think that was the question and it's important. So, here.
Largely agree, a slight twist on that. I think everybody who's currently in the cabinet will be tainted one way or the other by Brexit. And when you think about who the selectorate are for the next leader of the party, it's MPs and it's the party memberships. They will have pissed off one half of the party or the other, whichever way they will have gone. So I agree it will be one of the new intake. There are some really interesting backbenchers in that mix. People like Johnny, people like James Cleverly, people that are up and coming, are liked by the public and are liked by the party at large. That's probably where we need to make it.
Great, let's take a few more. There are some at the back. There are a couple of no, second to last row at the back.
I sort of identify myself and say I couldn't possibly say who I'd like as the next leader of the party because I'm Johnny Mercer's father-in-law. I would move on from that because I believe it's relevant. You're after a core vote and you're talking to the younger generation. What's not been mentioned, and this is extremely important with Johnny as an example, is do people of any age vote for their local man, woman, candidate, or for the party leader? And this troubles me greatly. I knocked on a lot of doors on Johnny's behalf. Now, I believe Johnny won his seat because of who he was, not necessarily for the party he stood for. So I would suggest that the next leader of the Conservative Party has got a hell of a job to do, and therefore, will you as a party be trying to persuade voters to vote for the local person or the great leader, whoever that might be? Thank you.
Fantastic. And one more along that row, I think. Did you have your hand up? Or no? Maybe not. Yeah.
I think the next leader of the Conservative Party is somebody who is authentic, somebody who can capture what the public want, and somebody who understands what. There's been a lot of talk of what leadership is, so someone who actually understands what leadership is and how to make friends and influence people.
No names. Very interesting.
/ Johnny Mercer.
There was also a declared interest there, fantastic. So before we, I'd like to do another reverse Q&A now, if that's possible. But before we do, if we can flip, it's actually me who do it. So the next, do you agree or disagree with the way in which political parties are currently funded? The question on the poll is actually slightly longer. It says the way the political parties are currently funded, with Labour mostly through trade unions and the Conservatives mostly through big donations from private donors. Agree, disagree, don't know. Please, as many of you as possible, give your views. Just a helpful barometer on quite an interesting question.
Can I answer the party person thing?
Yes.
Yeah. So when this always comes up, right? Voting for the person or voting for the party. We have to. This is why we have to change, right? Because we have to somehow create this movement, right? Where, as was indicated earlier on, people are not embarrassed to be in the Conservative Party, right? They're actually proud to be in it because they're part of a team that is changing the country and meeting the challenges going forward, and they feel at home there. I just feel that if we get to a place where we're kind of moving away from the team, if you like, the organisation, in towards individuals, I don't think that's the future. You will never achieve anything on your own in life in general, but particularly in politics, right? We have to work together. We have to build a movement that people want to be part of, and feel that they're part of, and want to go and campaign for, and want to go and advocate for on a Saturday morning, right? So they look forward actually to meeting at 10 o'clock so they can go canvassing and then go to the pub afterwards. And it does happen, believe it or not, that does happen, because there are some brilliant Tory MPs, right, who have engendered that spirit within their community. So we've got to, this is why I don't join the groups within the Tories, right? Conservatives for this, Conservatives for that. The Conservative Party has to be this movement. right? You can't go around joining lots of other clubs. It has to be us, and we have to create this movement. We can only do it if you guys get involved and you get your mates involved, and we can kind of start to build a movement.
Johnny, did you have a question for the audience?
Can you give me 2 minutes?
Yes. Great. Would you like to ask?
Yeah. Given that we're here trying to work out how we appeal to the centre ground, what's the sort of 5 to 10 word policy that you would like to see in Johnny's manifesto for leadership? Or anybody else's manifesto for leadership? But with the thing that came out from the first poll was it's important to represent young people's issues. What are those young people's issues that people in the Westminster bubble, which unfortunately applies to all 4 of us, are not identifying?
So we have a gentleman there.
You go first, buddy.
Because I have the microphone, I use this power. I think that probably the most important thing is for graduates would be looking at how to rebalance the economy so you don't just have to live in London, because I think it's a real issue for people leaving university.
Yeah. And what about you?
Improve housing and infrastructure, and stop the conflict over immigration.
Right. So I mean, what I hear quite a lot is around infrastructure. Right. What you'll find in Westminster, no one talks about buses. No one ever talks about buses. Right. In my community, people use it all the time, and the local operators, and I find them, really wilco, and they want to ameliorate and sort of meet the challenge, and hundreds of thousands of people use it. Right. No one talks about it up here. We've got to go back to what genuinely makes a difference in people's lives. Yeah, go on, shout it out.
We've got some more here.
It's got to be more mental health and social media regulation.
Yeah.
Okay, one behind.
Policies to give young people real social capital. You don't have to go to university. Lifelong learning, skills, apprenticeships, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another one here.
Yeah, go on.
Stop chasing votes in your constituencies. Reach out to places in the cities. We've got a massive knife crime epidemic right now. Most Tory MPs will care about their home counties rather than what's going on in constituencies that they're not going to win. You hear Hammond talking on the radio this morning and all that, and you look at the Standard and it's like blaming things like UK drill music, which is a form of free speech, which is a result of the environment these people are in, but we cut away their opportunities from their home counties. It's ridiculous.
This is why you have to get involved in politics, right? But before I went in, I was sick of old grey-haired dudes telling me what I wanted, right? Who are 30, 40 years older than me. So you guys have to get involved. Even if, like me, you come to this new. The strength of the Conservative Party is how important the church is and how we get people in like you. So look, it's enormously frustrating, but there's no point standing on the sidelines and getting upset. You've got to get involved. There's no such thing as an unwinnable seat either. They gave me 1% chance.
Gentleman just here.
The environment I think is a useful one, especially because on last Friday there was strikes. I think the Conservative response to that wasn't particularly inspiring or perhaps useful for our party. I'm a Conservative.
Yeah, it's right. You don't have to confess. This is a safe environment. This is a safe environment. So what happened last Friday?
Was it last Friday before there's children's strikes?
Oh yeah.
Then,
I mean, it's a bit tone deaf, isn't it, to call them out, right? But we did it. Yeah. This is why I speak out. Honestly, people think not on this panel, but people in the media genuinely think you talk out because you want to get your name in the paper. Actually, you talk out because you believe in this stuff, right? And someone's going to come, you're going to go door knocking the next day, and they're going to say, "Well, why are you guys calling out all the school children?" That's why I speak out and say it's wrong. It's not because I want someone to pick up that I think the way Saj did the whole Shamima Begum stuff, I think he made the wrong call. Right? That's not because I wanna Johnny's obviously moderate and all the rest of it. It's because I that's just what I believe, right? So and we need to encourage people to do that. One of the things around the political parties, you said there's a lot of people who give you comments. I had a lot of MPs text me today saying this is really exciting, what you're doing and so on. And I had to say, look, I haven't even mentioned the Prime Minister, right? I haven't, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in building this movement. And a lot of other MPs are, but they don't, we have this culture where they're not encouraged to be themselves and speak out. And that's one thing I'd like to change. And all these things will come together and you get more members. If you just chase members, give them a Nando's card,
we're finished.
I can confirm I had nothing to do with it nowadays. Or the Love Island bottles.
So my reflection on this, and this is partly because it's my profession to be a communicator, is that actually we're really doing a terrible job of communicating what we're doing, because of the things that you just mentioned, with the exception of the tone deafness on UK drill music. We've got flagship government policies on these things. They were part of the reason that the Prime Minister in the country that works for everyone, which addresses the thing that you were talking about, and how do you deal with the polarities of Brexit and deal with that, were at the heart of the original pitch. They are the policies that we do have. We haven't got many, but they are the policies we do have. And if people don't feel like they're there, then we've got a serious communication.
But a lot of that comes down to who people think I give ministers a hard time, right? But it's who you appoint in that department. Because if you look at Matt Hancock now, he goes out and he smashes espousing for digital and the NHS every day. And that's something someone like me can be proud of. I invite him down, I do a night shift with him in Derriford. If you have a minister who says it's something else, and I'm not going to get into it, but it's not what we think as a Westminster political class, or they got that wrong. How does it feel to work in that organisation, right? If your number one person up top of the food chain has fundamentally misunderstood the problem, and we have to get this credibility gap back. People think I had this conversation. I've actually had it, with the Prime Minister herself, who looks at managing the party. I totally get that; it's a huge challenge. But the rest of the country's way beyond that.
Can I ask a slightly cheeky question of you? Would you take a cabinet job under this Prime Minister?
I think that's a rather unkind question. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I know this is really weird, but I genuinely have no self-interest in this. I enjoy the campaigning, going on a movement, and engaging people who are not involved in politics. I love the campaigning side of it. Whatever happens will happen, but it's not, we've got the wrong attitude in London. It's like, we kind of think we talk amongst ourselves and then come together and think who should be Prime Minister and who did. It's actually the people who vote in this and the party who will vote in this. And, I do think that if you create a movement, you can reignite the party, and we can do well at the next election, which is why all the doom and gloom, I think, is nonsense.
Laura, do you have anything to add?
I took that. Well, no, as a yes. It is interesting to ask about your own ambition, because people get excited sometimes when they listen to you, and you sound different, you're saying things that are different, so people, I think that's not a cheeky question, I think that's a fair question, and there will be a point, I imagine, in which you do say, okay, maybe it's the time to step up. It might not be now, it might be in a lot of, in a year's time. You did talk about collective responsibility and ministers breaking that. If you were to go into cabinet, could you see yourself not speaking out if you weren't happy?
Look, I did a lunch today with like 200 people from the military, and I think my problem is that I genuinely, people say sort of don't change all this. I just can't really see it. It's sort of I can see people who've been here 10 years more than me, and I can't see myself making that transition, right? Because I have too many people who will call me out, who will absolutely hold me to account. My wife will probably leave me. I just can't see it. But look, I've been here 3 or 4 years, and we'll see what happens. I think people look at this stuff completely the wrong way around. I think if you can build a movement, start from there, see where you go.
But a movement needs a leader.
I think you build it actually around the stuff you believe in, and a leader will come out of that.
Very good. We are right up against the end of time. I know there are a few more questions, but hopefully in the aftermath, Johnny might be able to answer them, or we can send them next time. I've been keeping relatively quiet throughout this evening, but actually, what we are discussing this evening sits at the heart of Onward's mission, and it also sits at the heart of a piece of research which we're bringing out in the next few weeks, which will look at precisely this question of how to win over younger generations of voters with centre-right ideas, policies, and messages. That's the result of a massive 10,000 sample poll, one of the largest polls focused on that subject matter that anyone's done, certainly since age became the true dividing line in electoral politics in the last few years. So hopefully we'll be providing some answers to some of the questions that we posed tonight, and providing potentially a bit of a rubric for politicians like Johnny, for actually young people in this room to start to espouse a kind of a centre-right philosophy that can win over large groups of people amongst younger generations, of which certainly the Conservative Party has got itself into a very difficult position. It should astound everyone on the centre-right that the Conservative Party, or sorry, that 73% of 18 to 24-year-old women in particular voted for the Labour Party at the last general election. Kind of completely extraordinary statistic. But will also, I think, hopefully set a bit of a kind of guiding light for policymakers who are trying to think about some of the answers to the big questions. And lots of the policies that you guys mentioned this evening, whether it's tax, whether it's mental health, whether it's the environment, even finding a kind of positive answer to the difficult, thorny question of Brexit. Those are the issues that we are hearing in our polling and our focus groups that young people really care about. So it's actually really rewarding and fantastic for me to hear some of that played back to us this evening. Onward itself wants to be a movement as well. So speaking to Johnny's point, we don't really like the old model of think tanks that sit in a darkened room and do research for 3 months and then publish a research report to get 1 day's worth of news coverage. We want to build something that develops ideas that can live and grow over time and can gather behind them a crowd of people, especially younger people, to campaign for them, to advocate for them, and to make the case such that politicians listen. So it's fantastic to have all of you here this evening, and I hope that you'll be part of that network and that movement as we go forward. Because I do think, as Johnny says, politics is changing. I don't think the old models really work anymore. And I hope that through organisations like Onward, we can change that for the better, rather than seeing the old divisions re-emerge, as I think they are on both left and right. And certainly that generational gap widen, which I think does huge damage to the country, quite aside from the damage that it does to the Conservative Party. So thank you all very much for being here. Thank you to our speakers, to Johnny, to Craig, and to Laura. Thank you in particular to everyone for hosting us in such magnificent surroundings, and I hope you'll stick around for a drink if there are any left, and for some conversation afterwards. But thank you very much.